Hello, I'm Evan Cheng, and I'm doing my final project on Asians in American society. While there are numerous ethnic groups within Asia, each with their own individual stories, I'll focus on Chinese and East Asian racism because most stereotypes tend to place all East Asians into one racialized category. Before we get to how racism against Asians began in American society, we should first learn about the history of Asian immigration into the United States. The first big migration of Asians into the country started with the 1848 California gold rush, where close to 4,000 Chinese miners packed their bags and shipped out to the Bay Area and Sacramento in California. By the end of the 1850s, Chinese miners made up about one-fifth of the population in these mining counties. White miners saw the Chinese as threats to their work in addition to their perceived backwards culture and lifestyles, so they forced Chinese populations to cluster together in city centers, which later came to be known as Chinatowns. Discriminatory housing policies forced Chinese immigrants to live in Chinatowns and prevent them from purchasing houses or applying for loans or even working outside the areas. The major blow to Chinese immigration came in 1882 with the Chinese Exclusion Act, the first immigration policy to exclusively bar immigration based on race. The Chinese Exclusion Act remained until the Immigration and Naturalization Acts of 1952 and 65, which finally relaxed and then ended immigration quotas, leading to a massive swarm of Chinese and Asian immigration into the country, with the number of Chinese in the country by the end of the 1960s close to 240,000. For anthropologists, finding fault with the Chinese was difficult because their history of successful intellects and expansive empires nearly nullified physiological claims to inferiority, but nearly every notable anthropologist and sociologist we have learned about has voiced their argument against the Asian. The father of taxonomy himself, Carl Linnaeus, was one of the first figures to place labels on what he called the Asiatic race. Linnaeus maintained the white superiority common of the time by labeling the Asian as luridus, melancholicus, rigidus, or pale yellow skin color, melancholy temperament, and stiff stature. You can learn more about Linnaeus and the other anthropologists in Gould and Haller. Linnaeus did not place his labeled races into a hierarchy, but later anthropologist J.F. Blumenbach did. Blumenbach created a hierarchy based on beauty, with, of course, the Caucasian race on top and the Oriental/Mongolian race at the bottom, along with the African race. These races, Blumenbach argued, were the least attractive and the farthest departure from the ideal Caucasian standard. Joseph LeConte saw the Asians as strong in their racial development, but too tied to their ancient culture, calling them unassimilable and unable to absorb American ideals to evolve out of their previous, more primitive forms. Physician J.P. Whitney continued the prevailing opposition to miscegenation, declaring that mixing Anglo-Saxons with Chinese would create worthless offspring incapable of self-government. Another unknown form of Asian scientific racism came from Dr. John Langdon Down, famous for his identification of the disability now called Down syndrome in 1866. He's pictured on the right. A genetic learning and physical disability, Dr. Down originally called the disability Mongolian idiocy or Mongolism because, as he described, the physical defects resembled those of the Mongol or Asian race, and the syndrome, like the race it was named after, was a result of degeneration of those particular races, like Asians and Africans. The original name lasted more than 100 years before the London Times renamed the effect to what it is called today. Perhaps the most vocal in Asian inferiority was sociologist Garrett Lansing. In his paper, Chinese Immigration, a Sociological Study, Lansing continued the thread of the Chinese being unassimilable to American society. Their inability to assimilate results from their innate and inherited traits and culture that tie them to ancient ways and traditions, unable to develop the knowledge or the skills to succeed in modern American ways. The paper-thin reasons for Asian superiority are important because even though they are not as universally well known compared to African inferiority, they laid a foundation for the stereotypes that have plagued and continue to plague Asians to this day. Anthropologists, sociologists, and their arguments have had some effect on the Asian and their citizenship status throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. The case People v. Hall in 1854 took place in California. And in that court order or court decision ruled that Chinese people were not allowed to testify against white people in court, effectively denying Chinese people citizenship and freeing a white man convicted of murdering a Chinese minor. The two cases of Ozawa v. United States and United States v. Bhagat Singh Thin served to prohibit Asians from enjoying the benefits of American citizenship. In the two cases, Ozawa, a Japanese man who spent his collegiate years in California and established a family and a business, and Thin, a Sikh Indian man who served for the United States in World War I, were denied citizenship because their skin complexion did not match the consensus definition of white at the time. Now, these historical stereotypes by no means have completely gone away from American society, but they originate in the early 1900s or even before, placing Asians into positions of weakness and persecution. We already talked about how their perceived backwards lifestyles, both in culture and in physicality, contributed to their inferiority and supported separation in society. The terms Yellow Peril and Dragon Lady are synonymous with early Anglo-Saxon fears in the mid-1800s. Yellow Peril refers to the white fears of the Chinese because of their backwards culture, which posed a threat to white society and the security of white workers. Dragon Lady is a part of Yellow Peril, as Asian women in particular were seen as sexually deviant and submissive, seducing white men for their own nefarious goals. The term was first used in the 1936 comic Terry and the Pirates, pictured there. The comic pictured on the slide depicts the Dragon Lady, and those depictions continued throughout media presentations throughout the 1900s. Perhaps the most notable Asian stereotype is the myth of the model minority. The model minority attributes the widespread intellectual and occupational success of Asians to their work ethic and determination. This myth, while sounding overwhelmingly positive, poses more harm than good. It essentially homogenizes all East Asians while placing immense pressure on them to rise to the level of success expected of them. The myth was popularized by President Reagan in 1984 when he said, "Asian Americans preserve the American dream by living up to the bedrock values of America." Another negative aspect of the model minority myth is that it tends to place blame on other minority ethnic groups. If Asians can earn their success through hard work, why are Black and Latino communities still stuck in lower degrees of education and socioeconomic status? But asking that type of question ignores the environmental and obviously racist factors that have contributed to the differing degrees of racism experienced by the various ethnic groups in the country. All these contemporary stereotypes we have attributed to Asians at one point or another. These stereotypes are reinforced by the constant depictions in movies, TV, video games, and throughout all media. The slanted eyes gesture in particular is the most harmful one because, in my opinion, it is one of the most racist gestures one can do towards Asians. This is especially recent because, as pictured on the bottom right, baseball player Yuli Gurriel of the Houston Astros did the gesture after hitting a home run off Japanese pitcher Yu Darvish in the 2017 World Series. And instead of suspending him immediately, which I thought MLB should have done, MLB suspended him at the start of the next season, a whole 5 months after the World Series. Delaying the punishment negated the true dangers of the gesture, and pushing it back will make people forget why he was even suspended. These stereotypes and tropes can be represented in one particularly disturbing video by Fox News reporter Jesse Waters. I won't show the whole video, but only by watching 1 minute of it will you understand the particular issues that should be blatantly obvious. Waters has since said that his report was all good fun, but his poor stylistic choices cannot be separated from his cultural ignorance. Let's take a look.
Am I supposed to bow to say hello? I like these watches. Are they hot?
JC Penney 398.
Do you like Donald Trump?
Yes, Hillary Clinton. Basically, it's the extension of Obama.
Who are you going to vote for?
Clinton wife.
Clinton's wife has a name. What is it?
Oh man, forget it.
Snap out of it.
What do you think about Donald Trump?
I don't like it. He has a big mouth.
He can say what he wants. It doesn't really affect me, and I don't think he's gonna win. So
Trump has been beating up on China. How does that make you feel?
Speak! Why don't you speak?
Donald Trump.
In response to Waters' incredible reporting, the Daily Show correspondent Ronnie Cheng had his own strongly worded opinion. I respect and applaud Ronnie Cheng's reaction to Jesse Waters and for speaking out against obvious misrepresentations in ways that most Asians and I would like to see more of.
What the hell was that? How was that on the news? In fact, how was that even on TV? Where the f did this come from? I mean, everyone's been wondering who'd be the target of 2016's worst racism. I didn't even know Asians were in the running. Oh, and by the way, if you're going to be racist, at least get your stereotypes right, you ignorant sack of Karate isn't Chinese, it's Japanese. And you're doing it in a taekwondo studio, which is Korean, you f***ing jack off, jack off, jack off, jack off, jack off. This guy. And seriously, Mr. Miyagi, update your reference material. That's like me making fun of Americans for Saturday Night Fever and Mr. T. Yeah, real topical stuff, buddy. If you want to come at Chinese people, make fun of China's high pollution or the fact that they censor most of the internet, which in this case might actually be a good thing, since no person from China will ever have to watch your garbage attempt at comedy. Donald Trump beating up on China, how does that make you feel?
Speak! Why don't you speak?
Hey, asshole, they don't speak English. That's why they're silent. It's easy to make fun of someone when they can't respond. Here,
The increasing number of Asians in sports and politics in particular challenged the decades-old stereotypes that used to plague them, such as dragging ladies or being physically inferior. Yao Ming was not only a global NBA superstar because of his height, but for his role as an international ambassador. Jeremy Lin's reign of Linsanity exhibits swagger that directly challenges the notions of Asian physical inferiority in a sport dominated by African Americans and white counterparts. As Oliver Wayne discusses, the fact that Lin exhibits swag is important because it validates a desire to lay claim to conventional masculinity, access many feel has long been denied to them. No longer are Asians the passive, backwards people of the East, as they are as active and motivated as the Anglo-Saxon ideals that run this country. Takuma Sato is the first Asian to win the Indy 500, winning it back in 2017. Again, another claim to disprove the bad driver stereotype. This most recent election had a boom in Asian American politicians in the running, with more than a dozen running for state positions in California and more than 18 Asian American men and women in the U.S. Congress, such as California Representative Judy Chu. Thank you for watching my presentation, and I hope you learned a little something about Asians and how racism against them may not be as scientifically motivated as African Americans and may be more socially oriented, but they are rooted in similar scientific biases that are continuously exposed in American society today. Thank you.